which leads us on to the limitations. Perfect timing there. All traffic in and out must use SSL. End of story. I don't know if that's a limitation. It's just something you have to be aware of. For example, if you were to use UTL, if you were to use UTL HTTP, it's there, you can use it. And if you try to use a request to make a request with HTTP request, if you try to specify a URL that is HTTP rather than HTTPS, it simply doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So you must use HTTPS. For example, if I try to select HTTP // if I try to go to, say, one of our sites with HTTP, this is one of our, no, that will not work. Yeah, that should work actually. Yes, if I try to go to that. So I'm making for my ADB, my autonomous data warehouse, I'm making an outgoing call to one of these things. Interesting error message. It doesn't work. Right. What you have to do is set your wallet to a null string. Let's try again. Let me go to a different one. Oh, we're using different wallets on that site. Hang on, I'll go to Oracle as instead. There's an Oracle one. I'm in the wrong database. Let me go to connect admin at ATP. Right, try again. I'll go to Oracle.com to make sure this is going to function. www.oracle.com. Insufficient privileges. Set my wallet and try again. Insufficient privilege. Well, I'm sorry about this, but clearly I'm not getting exactly the effects I want. So you'll just have to trust me on this for now. What Oracle does, they provide a wallet. They provide a wallet which is pre-populated with several dozen digital certificates. They claim about 100 odd, and that should let you connect to absolutely everything, and it does. Now I have to apologize for my little demonstration here not
John,
working.
Security question. The SQL net access, can we lock it down? Is it open to the entire world? Internet?
If you look at it, yes and no. If you look at my alias, what you'll see is that when you create your database, you get supplied with a wallet containing a certificate. And I've created TNS names alias, and there you see we're going to go to TCPS note, a non-standard port, and then there's the listening address of the scan listeners that will be routing me through to my container. So the certificate distinguished name. So you have to use SSL. There is no way. You can't get to the web services without using HTTPS. You can't get to SQLnet services without using TCPS. That having been said, if you wish, you can open your database up, your database listeners to the outside world, so that anyone on the planet could do this. You wouldn't be wanting to do that on a production site in most circumstances. You would be wanting to restrict that access through a firewall, which is all part of standard functionality, so that your database is not exposed to the internet. And then your access would typically come in either through a load balancing route, through a router, configured, which they supply, of course, configured for routing TCP, or there is a VPN facility provided by Oracle as well. So yes, it can be open to the world. In the production environment, you would probably restrict it to VPN connections or nominated addresses through a firewall router.
And the firewall is a point and click experience?
I would say it was considerably, it is not initially straightforward to set up the load balancing firewall router. And the first time I did it, it took me a long time. But yes, in theory, it's point and click.
Okay, interesting. To the students, if anybody wants some mentoring or assistance on that or anything else related to OCI or ADB, please give us a call. Back to you, John.
Okay. Now, there are some restrictions on what you can and can't do. The limitations. Let me get some links up. We have, for example, yes, all traffic in and out must use SSL. Some things won't work. Oh, database links have to use SSL as well. So you can make database links to on-premises environments, no problem at all. But you're going to have to configure secure sockets at both sides. Outgoing calls, as I failed to demonstrate, must use SSL to your external web services and so on. So you can go anywhere, but the protocol has to be permitted. You've got the usual access control list capability that you can create. Now,
very interesting point. Accessing on-premise databases through database links. Anybody have any questions that come to mind on perhaps accessing your on-premise databases? Please put them in the chat or contact us afterwards. Thank you.
I particularly looked at the limitations within Apex, because that's of always particular importance to us. There are some limitations here. I am not fully competent to discuss how important they are, but limitation authentication schemes, self-service requests. The wallet I've already mentioned. The wallet is pre-supplied. So there are some limitations here. How important they are, I can't say, but that will be a matter for, I'm sure Tyson could, if any of these immediately grab you as being important, put a question in, and we'll see if we can get an answer.
Yeah,
now,
I would like to speak to this just for 1 second, just as a general statement. I would say a couple things just to watch out for is that there are some throttling set up for web service calls and emails. So if you're sending if your application is sending or is a bit noisy over email or is consuming several RESTful services, I would say to solve that problem, I would say either you might have to look at bundling your emails. So rather than sending one email for each individual transaction, maybe you could consider bucketing emails and kind of sending a digest to your users. Or you could look at some of the wonderful caching capabilities that Apex provides for not actually making web service requests every single time and instead relying on a cache. The other thing that I just wanted to mention that I think this can be critical for certain larger applications is it says the following application authentication schemes are not supported. So this is application level authentication schemes, and that's a header variable, LDAP directory, and single sign-on. So one thing that you're kind of forced into is using kind of the built-in authentication that Apex provides. There's wonderful features for being able to manage and create users at the application level. That's beyond the scope of this discussion. But just note that if you want to leverage your existing Active Directory in your Apex applications, that won't necessarily be an option for you. So that's just a couple hurdles that you'll have to deal with.
Interesting. They may well want to use Oracle Universal Directory instead. I assume this next bullet point, by the way, you may be able to configure a third-party print server within the apps. Would that be something like Apex Office Print, Tyson?
Exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. There are also some limitations that the DBA may notice. This link, I think, also will be provided. So here I've just gone to using database features, autonomous transaction processing, database features with limited support. Do they matter? You can't do transportable table spaces, for instance. There's a surprise. Now, I don't think many of these are of any significance at all. They're just a natural result of working in a shared environment.